Good afternoon to everyone and welcome to the NJSBDC at Rutgers-Newark webinar series today. Today's webinar is entitled Developing Your E-Commerce Capabilities, Your Technology, Logistics, and Supply Chain. My name is Priscilla Lambert-Calder, and I will be assisting on today's webinar. So I'm going to take this opportunity to just let you know a little bit about the SBDC and what we do. And while we're doing this, we'll just give other participants the opportunity to log in before we get started. The SBDC, which stands for the Small Business Development Center, is a resource center for the United States Small Business Administration. And we provide one-on-one business advisory and consulting services to individuals and businesses across the state of New Jersey. We assist individuals who are either seeking to start a business or as more established businesses who need help to grow, operate, and sustain their business. And this service is available to you at no cost. Well, that's not entirely true. It is paid for by your tax dollars. So I find that I should take advantage of anything I'm paying for. But the service is mostly free of charge. We also provide these services through consultants. These consultants may have expertise in different areas such as marketing, government contracting, certifications, cybersecurity, financing and capital, business strategy, import, export, and many more. And so whatever your area of concern is, if you need help in scaling your business, if you just don't know where to start, we have a consultant with expertise in any area that you can think of that can assist you and get you connected to the resources that you need to start and grow your business. We also provide training workshops and webinars, such as the one that you're attending today. Most of them are free. Some are at a nominal fee, but there's so much value for your money, even if it's as low as $15 or $50. These workshops and webinars are phenomenal. We have 12 centers across New Jersey, so you are free to attend any webinar anywhere in the state at any SBDC. Due to the current pandemic, all of our centers are operating virtually. So each SBDC center is responsible for one or multiple counties. Our center, which is located at Rutgers Business School at 25 James Street in Newark, we're responsible for Essex County. So if you're on today's webinar and you're outside of Essex County and you still need help with growing your business, you may need help, following up on what's discussed on the webinar today, or you may have other concerns, don't hesitate to still reach out to us. We can connect you to your local SBDC. It's very seamless once you register in our system. To register in our system, you simply need to visit our website, www.rnsbdc.com. And in the header of our webpage, there's a button there that says Request Counseling. You're going to click on that button. You're going to put in your email and complete that form, giving us as much information about you as possible and your business. And once you receive that It typically takes about 24 to 48 hours for an assigned business consultant to reach out to you. And these one-on-one sessions, they can happen in various formats. They can be over the phone, which, you know, majority of our clients prefer that. Of course, due to the pandemic, the face-to-face in person is restricted at this time. However, due to technology, we have WebEx, we have Zoom, we have we have Skype. So we have different means that we can sit with you and help you navigate issues or concerns that you may have about starting and growing your business. Each center may have a different focus when it comes to events, training events, and webinars. And so I encourage everyone to just check out every SBDC. We all may have different programs, but in terms of the counseling, we all share some of the same resources. So a lot of people are sometimes, you know, upset that they're unable to get counseling in Newark and think that's different to a counseling in Bergen County. But we do tend to sometimes share some of the same consultants. So you're getting the same service no matter where in the state of New Jersey that you live. Okay, so I think I mentioned today about requesting service. I'll give you our contact information in a bit. But today's webinar presenter is Ahmet Ekdad from Strymont Consulting. And he did an excellent job on the e-commerce webinar that we did, I think was last week on July 10th, sorry. It was really greatly attended. For those of you that may have missed that, feel free to send me an email. I'll send you some information so that you can see a replay of that webinar. This webinar will build on that, and it will give you a really good understanding of doing e-commerce. So for the benefit of everyone on this webinar, you will not be able, if you have questions, you will not be able to voice via audio. So please use the chat box. It's located to the, I think, right or the bottom, depending on what you're using, and just send a message. We'll do our best to answer the questions either during or at the end of the presentation. A copy of today's slide and the video replay of today's presentation will be available within 48 to 72 hours after the webinar presentation ends. So if you registered, please don't worry, you will receive a copy of the slides and the presentation. So I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, and I'm going to turn this over to Ahmet.
Okay, hi everybody. I hope you're all having a good afternoon. Let me just get my presentation up and running. So basically, if you were attending that first webinar about the e-commerce, this pretty much is a sort of supplemental continuation where we kind of go over following up on the e-commerce capabilities. We go over sort of what capabilities would benefit on your side. So basically, the three main topics of this webinar are technology, logistics, and supply chain. I'll jump straight into how these are defined in the context of this webinar. When we mean technology here, it means, you know, covering the software aspects of the e-commerce marketplaces. Pretty much, once you go into e-commerce, there's generally a variety of different software programs that you can utilize or sometimes you're required to utilize. Those are always something to keep in consideration. One, if it's a requirement, obviously because it's a requirement, and if you understand how it works, it makes it easier to get set up with that. And second is that the biggest aspect of e-commerce tends to be outside of the advertising that you put in to push your products forward, is the operational aspects and how you can maximize your efficiency on that side. So with optimized technology within the context of the level of business you're doing and the products you're doing, this will essentially define your cutting edge compared to the competition. Um, this doesn't necessarily mean everybody develops their own software. It just means that if you know which programs to use and you're using them correctly and you've integrated them, it will help you grow your business by letting you offer the best capabilities to the marketplaces. And then following up on that aspect, when it comes to logistics, these are actually topics that cover what you need to understand about how e-commerce works when in regards to logistics, which basically means their shipping and what they expect of you, preparing the packages, labels on the packages, dealing with returns. So this one covers the shipping component of the e-commerce operation. And then supply chain actually refers to your back end of the operation. So, where you're getting the products from, considerations for when receiving those products, and how to just maximize that end of your business to make it to allow you to focus more on the front end, which is where you're actually selling the products on the online marketplaces. Obviously, this can differ. I mean, if you are someone who manufactures products, and that can mean from actually having a large location where you're doing full manufacturing to custom homemade products, those technically would count as manufactured as well. Um, those will obviously differ. Maybe you're more focused on the raw material on the side, but the overall sentiment is there and it will apply. You'll just want to keep these in consideration when you're pursuing an e-commerce business. So if we jump straight into technology first, obviously the first one is going to be software. There's a lot of software. I listed three components of software that tend to be what everybody relies on when they're doing e-commerce, but there are all kinds of other services out there. As you can see at that caveat on the bottom, you can search for any services and meet with them, discuss with them pricing if it works for you, if their futures work for you. There's a lot of companies out there. Some of them do the same thing, some of them add different futures, some of them have better customer service. They might give you an account manager. There's all those different caveats that you need to research into. But technically, if you want to start off on a good footing for e-commerce, these three components are pretty much vital. Some of the online marketplaces will offer some level of this service. Amazon Seller Central, for example, they do offer abilities to purchase shipping labels directly from the system. So when you receive an order, you're able to use Amazon's platform to move forward, order a label, and then Amazon will give you that label, and then you use that to ship. And the benefit there is that you technically use Amazon's rate, but you're not required to use that. It is an option, and not every marketplace gives that option. So the top ones I list here, these aren't really referrals, but these are just the software services and programs that you've probably heard of if you've been looking into e-commerce, or if you've been selling on Amazon, you might have seen them advertising on there as partners. These are names that just pop up very frequently. So when it comes to shipping, FedEx and UPS have their own specific programs, which is FedEx Ship Manager and UPS World Ship, which allows you to utilize your account with them and then use their program to more optimally create labels. Because if you've ever created labels on their websites, it is a bit of a process. Obviously, you could save addresses, but since if you're sending to different customers, it is a bit of a time-consuming process if you're not using the marketplace or the marketplace doesn't have it and you're trying to do it manually. Fortunately, Stamps does now work with UPS, so that is an option too. They originally were partnered with USPS and they still are, but now UPS is also a partner with them as well. So you can use Stamps. You can set up Stamps account and you can use Stamps to do both USPS and UPS shipping. And then there's companies that are like ShipStation, which are third-party companies that offer similar services in that you're able to use their system to choose the shipper based on your needs, create the labels, track the shipments, and basically just keep record of those operations. Um, the ship station sort of programs, they come with fees. You usually pay like a monthly fee. Stamps is you pay a fee and then you put money. You put money inside to pay for the postage. And then FedEx and UPS World Ship, technically their utility is given by them because you're a you're a shipper with that carrier. So there isn't necessarily fee, but the downside is that if you're not normally someone who ships in large volumes, the rates that they give will be based on that, because when it comes to shipping, your rate is usually determined by your volume, and the more volume you do, the more discount that the shipping company and shipping carriers will give you. So normally people tend to use stamps if they don't want the least hassle. But like I said, stamps is only USPS and UPS. So you might want to consider looking at services like ShipStation or any of the other ones. There's quite a few of them out there to set up with, and they all have their different pricing and features. One thing to note ahead of time too is that USPS isn't something you like. UPS and FedEx are carriers you'll generally be using the most, especially if you're sending packaged products. Anything that's not small, those companies are the ones you will be usually using. USPS comes into play with smaller products, media products, books, anything that isn't too large. USPS tends to have an advantage there. But another thing is that USPS is the one you have to go with when you want to ship to military bases or U.S. territories. Um, Obviously, you can shut if you're using selling on the marketplace. You can shut off shipping to those locations if you don't really want to deal with the hassle of it. But if you do want to keep those locations open, USPS is pretty much the way to go with them. Simply because obviously being the Federal Postal Service, they're set up to be able to manage those the most. When it comes to international, that's up to you, but you can work through the third party ones. They might give you the most organization. If you could also go to like FedEx and UPS. There is a bit more documentation process there. Obviously, they do offer international as well. But if you go through companies like these third parties like ShipStation and the others, there's a bit more of a simpler process. But that's only if you're generally selling internationally. Not many people tend to start with that. That's something they just roll into eventually. So it's a consideration, but not an immediate one. The next one is inventory product. I put these together because usually these softwares tend to bundle these two services. Essentially, how they work, like these Sellbrite, WebGility, Stybo, PDS. The way these guys work is that they let you use their platform, their software service platform, to put your products in. So you put your product information, and they'll keep record of that product information. And let's say if that service you use integrates with like let's say Amazon Seller and Walmart Marketplace, what they would help with is basically they'll integrate over API, which we'll cover in the next slide. They'll integrate with these marketplaces, and then your data will syndicate from that one source. So essentially, you'll have one central database through their services where you'll keep information on your product. And because your product information is there, they're able to add inventory management as well. Simply because if you've already got your products and your model number there, and you're keeping track of your products in there, inventory isn't that difficult to add onto it to keep track of. So you're able to update your inventory there, and they might offer options to syndicate the inventory as well. Maybe you set up like I want to update the inventory every 5 p.m. and then the software service will update the inventory based on that. It depends on the different software services and the features. They all have their own rules on that, but that is generally a possibility as well. So you don't have to manually update inventory in the marketplaces by yourself. You're able to use their services to automate that process, so you can focus on actual maybe product research, or maybe marketing, or increasing your business. On a side note, marketing is something that also has software services. You've probably heard of the companies. There's quite a few of them. That's not listed on here because that's kind of next step into growing your account, and it's a bit more on the marketing side. My focus here is mostly trying to discuss, the foundational and the operational levels of getting started. So the third one is the most obvious one. Even if you're not e-commerce, and let's say you're not using an accountant, or you're using accountant partially, you've probably heard of these softwares, or you might even use an Excel file. That is an option if if that's the kind of volume you're dealing with and you don't need to pay. I mean, you're free to use Excel files too. You just want to make sure that you're storing those accurately so nothing messes up, and keeping backups just in case. But the benefit here is that if you use companies like QuickBooks and Zero, what they do is that they'll have that data on the cloud, which is basically their servers. And if anything happens, that data stays there. And you're able to utilize these softwares. They do now have options to basically do browser based, so you don't need to download a program. But QuickBooks also does have like an enterprise level where you can have the desktop program set up and then manage it there. The reason that you would need these is basically creating the invoices, recording sales, and then tracking expenses. Creating invoices is necessary, obviously, if you want to get paid when you're doing this business with the marketplaces. But the part that I tend to emphasize here is that, well, accounting is something you expect to do. What you really want to have for this is that you want to make sure that you're tracking your information as accurately as possible, because you want to know, how your business is going. Your financial health is very important with e-commerce. You really want to keep an eye on how your business is going, and see that data ahead of time. And as you go, through the months and maybe into the next year, then you'll be able to look month over month, and then this month versus last month's sales, and take a look at those metrics. Because without that information, even if you see the high volume and high sales, and it's just not going to give you a good picture. And this is generally for all businesses entirely. But when it comes to e-commerce, because there's kind of a thin margin between succeeding and then your business kind of slowing down and requiring different approaches, it's vital to know how much room you have to maneuver, so you can take the necessary action without causing excessive expense on yourself, and putting yourself in a rut when you shouldn't be. So it's obviously good to keep in mind. So these three are basically the main software services to consider, as well as the three types of operational needs to keep in mind when you're running your e-commerce business. Like I said, some marketplaces like Amazon, they offer a lot of utilities, a lot of reports. They have like pages for like the business reports where you can see the payments they're making, and the sales. They have the inventory page where you can upload like a CSV file to update the inventories of your catalog. And the shipping, they offer you options to do the labels, but that depends on the marketplace. You can't guarantee, and it's always for sort of their benefit. You'll always want to have something on your side to keep in your records, just in case any problems come up or you're not able to access the platform for some reason. You just want to make sure that you have some kind of local copy, so you're not relying fully on their copy of the information. So let's dig a bit more into software. I will note that I'm not necessarily an IT consultant. My involvement with IT has generally just been integrating it properly with the overall business operations. So whenever like developers come in for a project, I would be there mostly just to make sure that their project is fitting the business needs and the operational needs, and just not disrupting anything while they actually put together the technology. But these are kind of broad level, tech related tech related aspects that will come up when you're doing e-commerce or any other business. As we move into the future, technology starts taking over a lot of how business is being done. And the first one here is API. You've probably heard of it, or you've probably even experienced it and not realized it. API is essentially just a software library that developers use to set up integrations. APIs of the marketplaces basically is like a entire list of commands and functions and different aspects that define how like the utility works and how it's put together, so that developers don't need to like create options. So let's use a example. Let's say that the software being created, it needs to save something. So there needs to be a button to save, and that button needs a command. What API does is that they give you that button, so your developer doesn't need to create a button for that. That function exists, and the developer just puts it together. So it's kind of like a tech Lego sort of situation. So instead of people building it, the marketplace says, "Here's my list of blocks. Um, you can put them together for your needs." So API's advantage is that it's relatively cheaper than depending on how complex you're trying to get, but it's relatively cheaper because a lot of like those software companies that provide the service providers, they do API integrations, and their side is pretty much set up for it too. So for them, it's not even building the blocks; it's almost literally them just bridging the connection between your account through their program and then your account on the marketplace that's offering the API. Because they're able to set up the template on their side once, because their experience with working with these integrations, and they just make the connections. So the API's advantage there is simply that it really expedites the process. It's not as expensive as the other options, and it allows for quick integrations. If you do have a budget, you can have your own developer create their own program. A lot of most developers should understand API because it's part of the field. So if you find someone who does Python, for example, which is a bit simpler than Java, they'll be able to put together something for you depending on what your needs are. It'll take a bit longer since they have to build the blocks, whereas you're not using a service provider who makes the immediate integration. But the advantage you might get there is that, let's say you're looking for something custom that service you can't find a real good service provider for, or you can't find one that's not expensive, because a lot of service providers are subscription as a service, so you do have to pay monthly to use their services. But let's say you do have a budget and you say that I don't want to keep paying this much every month for all the years that I use these people, and you just want a specific functionality. You are able to have a developer develop something custom and then make the connection, and free to go. There's no added requirements to make it work. You don't need another third party to make it work. You can set up everything, make the connection, and it's pretty much good to go. So the options that APIs commonly allow and work for is shipping, invoicing, inventory. So APIs can be used to expedite the shipping label process. That's what these third-party companies do with shipping, for example. They when you purchase labels for bulk orders, or you set it up to confirm orders, these programs, once you confirm them, will automatically take your confirmation, run it through their system, send the data to let's say Amazon. Amazon receives it, creates the label, or maybe they're connected to FedEx or UPS, goes there, connects the label, they bring that label back, then send confirmation to Amazon and let Amazon know, this is the tracking number that was purchased for this order. And all of this is done automatically. And then all you do is just keep track of it, make sure everything's good, and then ship it once you get the label. So these are basically how you can automate a system in there. So all you're focused on is the operational part, and APIs are pretty commonly available for that. The next level, this isn't something you'll probably run into unless you start setting up either on the if you were in my first webinar, I basically discussed 3 types of operations. It's self-hosting with your own website. It's marketplace where you're a third-party seller using a site to sell your products. And then there's the vendor level where you are a vendor to the retail partner. EDI is not something that comes up for anybody except retail partners, so like the vendor level. And that's because a lot of vendors do use EDI still as part of their business. EDI is actually an old concept, an old system. Back when faxing was kind of a thing still in business, a very common thing. So on one hand, there are 2 camps out there. One saying that they're kind of trying to get EDI to upgrade or be replaced because it is an old system, and because of that, it has a lot of upfront costs to make it work. But at the same time, because a lot of the major partners use EDI, they don't really see a reason to change their process. So let's say you're doing you're a vendor to Home Depot, because that's usually how Home Depot is set up, and then they use a company called Commerce Hub to handle their shipping aspects. and updating the inventory. You're able to use that Commerce Hub to upload the file inventory and the confirmations manually. They do have that bulk option. But let's say you're growing your business, the volume is increasing. It's you can't manually do it fast enough. You would say, okay, I want to set up an EDI, and then Home Depot and Commerce Hub would give you information on how to make that connection. There's a whole lot of process to it. There's like mapping. You need IT consultants to make the connection setups. You need a third-party EDI company who will actually run the EDI. There's a whole setup. There's a whole process. But I'm bringing it up just so you're aware that this is an option, and this is kind of the high-level setup once you grow your business enough that you want to pretty much automate everything. EDI is basically that. They have these document numbers which refer to different processes, and these are standardized pretty much universally because the EDI standard is kind of the whole business standard. So you can, once you set this up, once you have that set up, and then you can reach out to all your marketplaces in the future when you reach this level of business, and then this system is full automation. Like almost everything is done automatically. You just need people maintaining keeping an eye on the software. But other than that, you can focus full on the business. So this is the next level of the API, but it's not something that people commonly have to do unless they're trying to grow into a more bulk vendor level relationship. And then there are some partners who still want EDI because they just haven't upgraded their technology to sell in stores. So like, let's say you want to sell with the ShopRite's parent company is Wakefern, but let's say you want to sell in ShopRite, and you want to sell in their stores. They generally like to use EDI, but they do have options for, like, if you're not someone who has EDI, they have this option to use a web EDI, which is essentially browser-based. They give you access to it, and then the EDI documents go there, but you manually receive them on your side, and you don't need to make that upfront investment into an EDI software. So there are still alternatives out there, but most places have moved into just wanting it to be fully automated. So that's obviously a consideration to have in mind, but it's usually not going to be required. It's just good to know that this is here. And then related to all those two is something called ERP. Now, normally ERP comes off as a expensive investment because they kind of pitch you all. You can see in that circle all these different levels of business, but this is kind of the generic option because I mean, if you look at these options here, your business probably isn't doing all of these. It's only doing specific amounts, and technically you could have an ERP set up only for whatever you need. There are software providers out there who will set up the ERPs, and it might even be integration. So let's say you have ShipStation for shipping, you have QuickBooks for accounting. They'll set up your ERP and then just integrate those, and then you'll have one platform to manage all those software from. The benefit here is that, let's say you're growing your business with APIs, EDI isn't necessary, but you still need to find out a way to centralize everything. So you're not opening one program, doing the information, then closing it, then going to another program, processing it. You want everything to you want all these programs to link together and then go through the process, but you don't want to deal with setting up the EDI for any kind of setup like that. ERP will basically serve as the dashboard platform. So let's say you set up one for your company, and that's your company's company A. You'll have a company A ERP platform where you log into that page, and then your dashboard pops up, and then everything you need is there. You'll have tabs where the pages or tabs where you can do the shipping. Then that shipping will flow into the tabs with the reports, or it'll flow to the tab with the inventory to drop the inventory. All those connections can be made. So if you do decide in the future to look for ERP, you might find a lot of people trying to offer these huge, massive investments. But just know that there is an option to set up something simpler, and there are providers who do that from the get-go. So you might even find providers who, where I mentioned that API, they might provide their ERP platform that also integrates those service providers. So you're paying them to set up that software and then paying to use their software, the ERP software. but everything you need, they've packaged it and given it to you. So that one software will have everything you need. So that is an option as well. Um, to make a caveat here, like I said, these are mostly for marketplace and vendor. When it comes to self-hosting, reason I don't really touch on that is because with self-hosting, because you would probably be using WordPress or Shopify, WooCommerce, BigCommerce. These all have plugins, which pretty much offer these same services. So what they'll have is a like QuickBooks plugin, a inventory management plugin, a ShipStation plugin. They have the same logic, but basically all these um, self-hosting platforms have these plugins that you can choose from based on your need to set up on your website. So because of that, I don't really touch too much on it because self-hosting has all that flexibility. So it's not necessarily something that you need to worry about integrating later because you're self-hosting when you enter that plugin because it's your website. You're just setting up the plugin to better manage your website. You're not setting up a situation where your company's account on another marketplace and you're trying to uh, connect your operations with the ongoing operations in the marketplace. You're not trying to build a bridge there. For self-hosting, it's your website. You're just adding on another feature to enhance it. So because of that flexibility, it's not really the same situation with the ones for the marketplace and the vendor because you have full control of the situation. Everything is yours. You're just deciding how you want to proceed inside of it. But pretty much the logic here is the same. So as we leave technology, we enter this last bit here, which is under technology, but that's because of how these work. These things are called multi-channel platforms. Um, they might come up under different searches. So maybe you're looking for product management, and they'll say multi-channel product management, or you're looking for shipping and say multi-channel shipping. This basically just means that the partner you're working with is connected to multiple marketplaces. And the benefit here is that it allows you to centralize. So you can see from the image here, if that multi-channel in the middle was a service provider, they would be connected to Etsy, eBay, Shopify, Amazon, WooCommerce. So depending on which of these you would obviously have. But basically this multi-channel platform situation is essentially where the service provider you're using is saying that they are familiar with the integration requirements of these channels and that you can use their software as a centralized location to run that operation, and they will feed the integration data to those marketplaces without you having to do anything extra. So they're basically saying that they are integrated with multiple channels and their system operates on it. So you don't need to tinker with anything to make it work for Amazon versus make it work for eBay. They're saying that their system will do all of them the same way, and all you need to do is just enter the information required and they'll handle the integration. So if you are looking to sell in multi-platforms, it is worth checking out and considering how their multi-channel service and features are, because that might help your expedite the process and just give you a centralized location to work from. And in this one, this would work for also the hybrids where you might have a self-hosting website where you're doing e-commerce, but you're also doing e-commerce on Amazon, eBay, and you say, well, I want to manage both my self-hosted and my Amazon through one location, or like I want to do the shipping from one site. So instead of doing your shipping from Shopify's plugins, you use that multi-channel program to do both your self-hosted order processing and Amazon's order processing. So that is an option to centralize everything. Now we enter the logistics component. When it comes to logistics, what happens here is that there's different levels of logistic services. The most common and the one that most people will be using is parcel. That basically is anything that's individual, small packages, small cartons, boxes, anything you don't load with pallets. And obviously the main companies are FedEx, UPS, DHL, USPS. There's a lot of other companies out there, but in the US these are the common ones. So most of your business operation on e-commerce when you're setting up or entering it will likely be parcel. Less than truckloads, like I say here, is for palletized products, or maybe you're doing in bulk, or there are a few exceptions that you can't do parcel because you're shipping something large. I don't know, if you're shipping, for example, large appliances, let's say you're shipping furniture. You can't really, even if you ship your furniture in boxes, uh, it's not going to be shipped in a box. It needs to be on a pallet because that's how the marketplaces will likely want it to be organized, so they can make the delivery as well. So when it comes to that situation, they will enter less than truckload. You don't need to worry too much about that aspect though. Like it'll be, the experience will be similar to parcel because the marketplaces you'll be working with will give you the necessary information to arrange these. But the only difference is that for less than truckload, you might get other carriers who are, trucking companies, not these carrier companies. But you don't need to worry too much about it being complex, because as long as you're going to the marketplace that's requiring it, everything is being arranged there, so it's not going to be a headache arranging it. When you enter truckload, full truckload, that's going to likely be a vendor level situation, where you're shipping bulk orders that fill a trailer. Obviously, if you do reach a level of doing direct import, then it wouldn't be full truckload; it would be container load. But that is the higher level aspect. Now, when it comes to shipping, there's a few things to keep in mind. One, shipping origin. Basically, U.S. is a big country, and it takes a few days for anything from the East Coast to get to the West Coast, and that unfortunately does have an effect on your product's sales momentum and sales traction, basically, because if you're shipping it yourself and you can't guarantee 2 day shipping to someone on the West Coast, when they're shopping with their West Coast account, they'll see that the shipping will be standard shipping. Now, if you do FBA, where fulfilled by Amazon, where you send the Amazon warehouse, Amazon makes the arrangement so they store the products in a warehouse where they can guarantee 2 day prime delivery. But if you're doing it yourself and you're shipping it yourself, you'll only generally be able to offer like a 2 day guarantee with carrier if you're doing like UPS ground, FedEx ground, USPS, within a certain regional location. And you can actually check on their websites to see what the transit time is. And you'll get like a map showing the distances and the time it takes to get there. So you can use that as a general idea of how far you'll be able to send that shipment using the default shipping metric. So UPS ground, you use their regular service. UPS says if you're in New Jersey, they can do 2 days to a certain amount of states, um, uh, to distance from New Jersey, and everything beyond that starts becoming tiered: 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. But basically, you don't need to pay extra shipping for UPS ground to ship in 2 days. They're saying that they will ship that in 2 days within, um, even if you use their regular service, because it's in their region, in their transit time area is able to reach it on time. So that's something to take into consideration, because based on where your warehouse is, and if you're trying to do it yourself, that is something that'll limit your what the customers are expecting in shipping time. And also, if you're trying to commit to like a national fast shipping situation, uh, there will be a cost involved if you're trying to ship West Coast versus, or if you're in the East Coast and you're trying to ship West Coast and vice versa. That is obviously an impact that you'll want to calculate ahead of time. And you do have the power on the marketplaces to limit where you ship products. So the reason I say that is because in shipping destination, you do have the option to ship outside of the continental U.S., which includes Alaska and Hawaii. So if you want to ship to Alaska and Hawaii, you're shipping outside of the continental U.S., and have that option. You can also ship to territories as well, and military bases internationally. But let's say you don't want to do that because there's shipping costs involved, or when you set up the USPS label, it just it takes some effort doing so. You are able to close those locations on most marketplaces. Basically, you say that your item is not available for sale. Let's not forget Puerto Rico as well. Your item is not for sale to these locations because you just you're worried about the shipping costs, and it's just a hassle. So that is something you can consider as well. But obviously, that's up to you and what you sell and what the costs are for you. So you have, when it comes to shipping, you kind of are the one that's responsible for making all the actual arrangements for shipping the products, working with the carriers. One thing that a lot of the marketplaces will tell you as well, you can contact them if you run into issues with carriers. Let's say UPS was supposed to come pick up the packages, and you got them to agree and they made an appointment, and then they didn't come, and then the marketplace marked you as your shipment is 1 day late. You are able to like notify them that you did schedule with the carrier, they just didn't show up. But unfortunately, it's the main sentiment is that even though you can report them that way to at least note that it wasn't your fault that the metric impact happened, they emphasize that the seller is responsible for communicating with the carriers. So if your volume starts to increase, I highly recommend trying to find out who your region or your location's account manager is. If you have a warehouse location, odds are they might show up if you start showing volume. They'll show up to your office and introduce themselves. But if not, you can try to reach out and see who the contact person is, and then just start building up a relationship with them, because that person will be a reliable contact person to speak with if you run into any issues or you need some extra services. One thing I see some clients do once they start getting large volumes is that they have UPS drop trailers at their location, and then they'll fill up the trailer and they just set up a schedule. So in the morning, UPS comes with an empty trailer, leaves it in the dock. Then they come back in the evening, grab the full trailer, and then if you do set up a swap, they'll come with an empty trailer and then swap it out. There's a lot of different flexibility there, and you're able to arrange it, but that account manager person is the one that you would be speaking to for this. So that's something to keep in mind when you're doing shipping. It's vital because shipping metric is something that a lot of marketplaces keep a very careful eye on. They want to see consistent shipping, because at the end of the day, you're shipping to their customers if you're using their marketplace, and they want their customers to have the best experience. And because when you confirm a shipment, they send them a tracking and they tell them the package is on the way. They don't want a situation where they notify them and then the shipment is late and that customer complains. So they have their own considerations and concerns, and that's why the shipping aspect there is vital for them, and that's why it becomes vital for you. Another aspect of why focusing on shipping is vital too, or for your benefit this time, is lead time. Lead time in this case refers to the time between when you receive the order and when you ship the order. I usually recommend, if it doesn't affect your business operations, to make this the fastest thing you can do within realistic expectations of your operation. Obviously, don't try to do it fast if it's going to affect negatively. But if you are able to, try doing it as fast as possible. Basically, if you can do same day, that's perfect. If you can do it in 2 days, and it's not going to be that problematic. Anything after 2 days becomes a concern. But if you're selling a certain type of product that can't be done within 1 to 2 days, you are able to notify that when you're setting up in the marketplaces, because obviously if you can't realistically prepare the product, it's not really your fault. It's just the nature of that product and being sold in this way. It has to take time to be prepared. So obviously based on your needs, but if you're able to and you can, make the lead time your priority, because the benefits here is not just that it will take a bit time to see the return, but what happens is that if you show consistently good shipping metrics and you show very good lead times, the marketplace starts paying attention to your account, and they might start offering you extra benefits. So companies like Wayfair, for example, have these programs where they will, if you show good metrics and good lead time, they'll start putting 2-day tags on your products. So when customers are shopping, if they filter by 2 days and you're in that program, your product will stay up there and they'll see it. And it also gives that customer shopping, if they see 2 different products, two sellers of a similar product, if they see one has a 2-day one, obviously they're going to go with that person. So as you continue to maintain good shipping metrics and you give a good lead time, marketplaces will start giving you benefits in return for it. They'll start adding more visibility to your products, and they'll start making it more attractive to customers because you're able to commit to a quick process and give that commitment, and in return you get rewarded by being able to maximize the visibility of your products. Obviously, if you are expecting any issues due to delays, storms, acts of God, anything out of ordinary, you are able to immediately contact your marketplace or the retail partner that you're a vendor of. Contact them, just let them know. They'll keep that in mind. Their system might hit your metric, but as long as they note it ahead of time, it won't actually negatively impact you. So communication there is vital. Always make sure you keep in touch. But if you can ship as fast as possible without any issues, make that a priority because you will start reaping benefits of it in the future. Now, when it comes to packaging, because this has become more of a priority because of the shipping costs that have been rising pretty much year over year. Um, you want to package items in the most efficient way with the least waste. And some marketplaces even have options like, say, waste-free packaging, or they advertise that way, and those actually give you extra visibility too. So if that is applicable to you, you can research that and see if it's something you can set up for your product. But packaging is one of the ways that you can increase cost efficiency by focusing on reducing any kind of waste, any kind of impact it has on the shipping. So that's something to take a look at if possible. But don't set up anything that would affect or compromise the safety of the product. We'll get into returns in the next slide, but basically you need reliable packaging that will not affect your shipping too much or optimize your shipping, but continue to protect your product so you can avoid returns and replacements. Because if any damage happens during shipping, the customers will ask for a replacement, or they'll want a refund. You just don't want to lose those items to damages. I mean, if you can protect the item and avoid those situations, that's ideal, because they will slowly start to build. The cost of that will build up as you go forward. And then another thing to note is that when it comes to packaging, accurately labeling them is helpful to you in regards to pick and pack if you're shipping from your warehouse. And it also helps with identification. So let's say a customer receives the item, there's something wrong with it. If you have a decent labeling on there, it will help them let you know which product it is, so you can investigate the quality issue there. Now there isn't really a specific standards. You can prepare the label of whatever works for you, unless you're doing a retail partner and they specifically tell you they want it a certain way. But when it comes to marketplace, you can decide how you want to set that up yourself. It can just be a sticker with a code on it. It can be a QR code. It can be like this large label with all kinds of information on it, like a product picture, model number, title, cleaning instructions. So whatever you think would work for you, you can design it however you want based on the product. But anything that will help keep track for quality issues, that's ideal. Now, when it comes to returns, unfortunately, for e-commerce, returns are very common because marketplaces are customer centric, and they want their customers to have the best experience, like I noted when I was discussing the other slides. And as a result, they're quite flexible. Now, obviously, most marketplaces do have systems in place to make sure you're not dealing with fraudulent returners and people who are making suspicious claims. So their systems are in place, but sometimes if people get through that, or the robot doesn't catch it in time. So you are free to ask the customer for some verification stuff. Usually that's in the terms of asking for a picture of the damage, or asking for an explanation of like what the return reason is. And then kind of just going from there, just testing the waters. But basically, returns are common, even if you are a no return person, and you will often see kind of unusual situations where you put everything, all the information on that product possible is on the listing. The color is there, the pictures are there, everything is there. Like you'll say that no one can make a mistake here, and then you'll run into a situation the customer says this isn't what I expected, or it didn't fit my location, and you'll be wondering like, I put this information here, but unfortunately that's just how some customers are. There's nothing you can really do about that. If you are a marketplace seller, you are able to include a restocking fee. If it is a product that you're concerned about getting returned and it's not gonna, you won't be able to sell it as used or unopened inventory, and you're concerned that it's going to be waste product if it returns because you can't really repackage it. You can do a restocking fee, and obviously there are exceptions to certain categories. You're probably familiar with how, like, stores, for example, electronics, they might not be as keen on doing and giving you a long return period for that, simply because they just can't guarantee the what happened to the product. So you are able to set aside a time, and if any disputes do arise, and you're in that category, you're able to bring it up because it's something category specific. I mean, you shouldn't you aren't required to go out of your way if you don't need to, because that product is going to be lost. If you can and you won't get a loss, and it'll let you move forward, you can do that. But the marketplaces do realize that there are categories that it just won't make sense for, and you do have options in that regard. Now, one thing you can do, even though returns are common, and especially the ones where, like, remorse buying, you can't really mitigate remorse buying. That's just out of your hand. There's really no solution to that from your side. But let's say you do have other returns, and there's a pattern for it. So they're talking about defects, they're talking about damages, they're talking about something wrong with the shipment. You can research that, find out what's going on, and then try to mitigate it. And this way, you'll at least minimize returns that are occurring from that. The most common ones tend to be if your images aren't good enough, or if you don't have enough images. Sometimes customers expect something else when they look at the picture, and that becomes an issue. If there's any errors in the description, that can be an issue. And if there's something wrong with the packaging that's not guaranteeing that safety level, that can also be an issue. One thing I will note for images is that the biggest issue that I've had my clients experience is color. So there's some colors out there that when you photograph them, and another thing is obviously the person's monitor setup, because if they set up the contrast, brightness, hue, if they've tinkered with it, they're not going to really see the right color they should be seeing. So what works best there is not only just having a few different images of the product from maybe different angles, so you can get a different lighting situation, so they can kind of see that there's some color vibrancy going on, and maybe they can get a better idea of what the actual color is. You also can try to note the color in the descriptions. If you do have, like, Pantone colors, perhaps the manufacturer uses Pantone colors when they're making their color dye for the products. You can note those too. Those are because Pantone is a standardized color library, and because the manufacturer is using that standardized library, it never hurts to put that information, because if you do run into an issue where someone says this isn't the right color, and Amazon is telling you that you need to fix this, but they want your side of the dispute. If you tell them that you have this Pantone color, and then that it's certified, like, from the factory, that this is the color the dye is created in, and it's going by that standard, you can actually save a lot of headache, because you have certification on hand proving that this is the color. So that's obviously something in consideration as well. Now let's touch into supply before we enter the questions soon. So for supply, there's this thing called freshness. What freshness works as is it's your product's position in the marketplace with regards to content, appearance, and includes trends. So what this means is that you could have an item there that's best selling for months, but its freshness will decrease, and this is something that the marketplaces call it. Its freshness will decrease if you don't make any changes to it. So if you don't enhance it in a way, like, you don't want to enhance it in a way that negatively affects the sales, but if you don't add more pictures, if you don't polish up the descriptions, if you don't use any extra features that the marketplace gives to add more content, its freshness will decrease, is how they will approach it. It's not necessarily a metric that's quantitatively tracked, but it is something that essentially is determined by checking the click-through rates. So if someone's clicking on your product and not purchasing it, and if you start seeing a kind of downward trend from when your product was a best-selling and the sales are there, even if the sales are continuing, if you're seeing a situation where you're getting a lot of clicks but people aren't purchasing, it might be related to a freshness situation, and you might want to go in there and tinker with it and try to add some better, higher quality content, more images or new images if you got newer images, just to kind of refresh that listing. So when customers are clicking into it, they're there's an added consideration that they're seeing here that's attracting them to it. So another way this plays in is that if you're setting up a new item, you obviously don't have all the resources yet. You're focused on making the sales. That's obviously your main priority when you're entering into e-commerce or growing your e-commerce business, making the sales. That's not an issue as long as you set up your listing to make sales and start generating sales. That should be your number one priority. But once sales start picking up and maintaining a momentum, then this freshness comes into play, and that's when you can start considering investing into better content, better images, new features that are available to you from the marketplaces. One thing that Amazon gives is something called enhanced content, though you do have to have a brand registry to use that. But it adds a from the manufacturer details at the bottom of the listing, where you can add even more pictures, more text. These are added as keywords too that will have an impact. So keeping your listings fresh doesn't require major changes unless let's say you got a whole new, let's say you took your initial products listings images with your phone, outside the warehouse. You're just taking pictures of the phone. That's acceptable. You need to get the product up there, and you do what you got to do to get that there. But let's say the sales have been good, and now you've been able to invest in getting professional studio pictures taken. That would be a major change because you would be replacing the set of original pictures with the new set of brand new pictures. But normally that's not something common. I mean, once you do get professional pictures and maybe you add some lifestyle pictures where the rugs are in different settings, you don't really have anything extra beyond professional. There are some beta stuff being tested around where it's like artificial reality, where they can open the app on the phone and see that product in their house if it's a furniture product or home decor product. There are things like that, but those are beta. Those aren't exactly things you can jump to. But if you're in a position to try them, you can try them. But like I said, major changes aren't required to maintain freshness. You just need to make sure that you're always optimizing where you can, just to ensure that you're maximizing your click to sale rate. Sourcing is vital in that you want a reliable source for products. So you want to avoid the situation where you're working with a manufacturer and you can't guarantee that they won't have defects. And you also want to make sure you're restocking inventory as quickly as possible, because the longer you're out of stock, the worse it affects your rankings on the site, and the harder it is to come back up from that impact. Negative reviews you want to avoid due to the defects, because negative reviews do have an impact on your listing's performance. And if a customer sees negative reviews, they're just less likely to purchase. And it reduces your return requests because you can get that guarantee that the product you're sourcing isn't the issue. Maybe it's the shipping is the issue, and you can research into that. So for quality assurance, it has that impact as well. And when it comes to identifying new suppliers, if you need a initial supplier just to get started, you can work out whatever deal. But in the future, as you go forward, when it comes to e-commerce, e-commerce is a business investment. Like in the past, people usually used it as a supplemental thing, but now it is a business by itself. So as every other business, you want to make sure that your supply chain is a long-term partner you can rely on. And as business grows and they get the benefits of your growing business, they might be willing to make adjustments or add benefits to you that will help your business grow as well. So that's something to keep in mind when you move forward, just to try to establish those relationships so you get that guarantee and the peace of mind. Now, this import part actually just taps into touching on if you don't have experience with bringing products from overseas here to sell online. If you've tested e-commerce before, or if you've dabbled in it before, or if you're a seller whose distributor is an overseas company and you're importing it to your business, and now you're looking to make your traditional business an e-commerce business. You're probably familiar with these, so this is just kind of review of what you know. But normally, when it comes to e-commerce and you're sourcing from overseas, you will have to deal with the process of importing, which has customs duties, depending on the product type. And there are the possibility of delays due to either documentation issues or random custom clearance inspections, because customs generally sometimes they just randomly hold shipments that are coming in so they can take a look, just make sure that everything's up to date, documentation's good, nothing illegal going on. But because they do that, you can lose some time because they have to take it to their inspection location, and they analyze the package just to make sure there's nothing illegal going on there. So those are some considerations to keep in mind. Usually, if you're getting in parcels, so like if they're shipping it with like UPS or FedEx to you in boxes from the carrier you oversee, UPS or FedEx or DHL, they handle the import process, so they'll handle the documentations, and the seller, the supplier at the factory will handle the commercial invoices. So you don't really do much work there. Your level of work comes in more if you start importing larger quantities and have to deal with that. But the reason I bring this part up is because you want to make sure that when you're pricing products on the sites, you keep these costs in mind. Leave a good margin there, just to be safe. Don't overprice, that can be a problem, but it's always easier to drop prices than raise them without a negative impact in e-commerce. And if you're a vendor especially, raising prices means the partner needs to approve it, and they rarely approve it unless you have a really good reason, like raw materials went up and you can prove that it went up due to some natural change, or maybe something happened in the country where it's coming from and increased. So they're very strict on that. So where you can, always when pricing, experiment on a slightly higher level, but keep it close to what the market is. But do feel free to experiment on a higher level, leaving yourself a nice margin, and then work down from there. So you can make space for the import, for your fees, for the warehouse, for the shipping. Just keep everything in mind with that, and then that will allow you to just not lose money when you think you should be making money. You want to avoid those kind of situations. Now we came to the end of the slide here, so let me pull up our questions. My chat. One second. I appear to have lost my chat screen. Okay, I'm gonna stop share for a second here so I can pull up the chat. All right, so I'm looking at the questions now. I don't see any questions. If you guys have any questions, you can send there, or you can send in the chat. I do see one question here. Yes, you will get access to the slideshow once the lecture is done. That is something you'll have access to, and that's something that Priscilla will arrange. If you have any other questions, you can put it in the chat or in the questions, submit that. But essentially, the purpose of this presentation is just to give you an idea of what to consider when entering into e-commerce, especially if you're doing marketplaces and if you're planning to do vendor in the future. Now, self-hosting is more flexible, like I said, because you're in control of everything. So you can base that off of what makes it more expedient for you going forward. But outside of that, keep these in mind. If you can access that first webinar, the recording, or the PowerPoint, you can obtain that as well, go through that as well, and then compare it to this one just to get an idea of how you want to build your strategy. And on that basis, always keep considerations for the kind of costs that you will incur. Don't be too concerned about setting up a service provider if it's not going to benefit you like profitability wise. Excel is the universal go-to backup system slash safety net. Excel can do a lot. Excel you can use for keeping records. So if you think Excel will be more affordable for you, and if you think it's something you'll be able to do and you don't worry about the volume, feel free to use the Excel, and then feel free to use light software providers like stamps for UPS and USPS, or Amazon's own marketplace options. You don't need to go full blown, because your focus with your budget should be immediately setting up the products and selling the products. These here will help you get a cutting edge as you continue doing business, but your first commitment should always be getting the products there. So I worked with clients who first started e-commerce. They would take their cell phone, take pictures of the products in their warehouse, uh, open Photoshop or even Paint, and then list those. I mean, uh, as long as you commit to that business and you commit to that effort, you are able to set that up, and you're start from there, build the traction, and then consider these opportunities you have to grow your business and focus on business development and help you get a cutting edge from the ahead of this curve, because setting these up into the future of your business when you've already been building up traction and there's a lot of operational stuff going on, unfortunately tech integration can be disruptive at that point, and that can affect your focus on the business. So don't wait too long if you don't need to, but do consider them as options when it's the right time, or you believe it's the right time to expedite. And you'll know it's the right time if you set up with that program and you start seeing more sales and more traction. It'll let you know on that basis alone that you've set up at the right time. Um, Regarding the question about the baking product, that is a more specific question outside the webinar. You can definitely contact to the SBDC to kind of discuss the details of that, because obviously more information will be required to kind of determine. But from the get-go, I would say that when it comes to food products, it's usually self-hosting is currently still the strongest source, followed by the other marketplaces, simply because they haven't really the retail partners in the marketplace, online marketplaces. When it comes to baked products, they haven't really been able to settle down on a best practice they can standardize across sellers. There's a lot of considerations they have to make, so it is something that is still kind of experimental. Obviously, you are still able to list there. I mean, experimental doesn't mean you can't do it, but it just means that they don't necessarily have all the utilities and services in place to guarantee that you won't have to jury rig certain operations. So self-hosting tends to be the most reliable way to start from, and that's simply because when you self-host, you control your own site and you control your own products. And then you can have secondary as set up on marketplaces just to build up that visibility. And then hopefully using that kind of hybrid situation, you can build some traction there. So that is one thing that would be a setup. For dry goods, it would be similar. It usually applies to anything like food and beverage. They do have certain category requirements when it comes to those kind of products. So obviously, depends on where you want to set up. But like from what I've experienced, self-hosting is usually a great way to start, simply because you can build it around the needs of selling your product, not wait for those sites to get around to building what the platform you need to optimally sell the products on there, if that makes sense. All right. Okay, so no other questions it seems, so I guess we're good to go.
Lynn, the question you did ask about that you have a baking product that you're trying to bring to market, is it that you are trying to figure out how to market that product? Do you need help with establishing that business, or you're trying to figure out how to sell that online? Can you clarify that, please? Just type it in the chat box. But if it's what I think it is for anyone that's here, if you have an idea or a product and you need help, as I said in the beginning, you can take advantage of our one-on-one consultant, and have one of our consultants help you with establishing your business if that's what you're trying to do, or you know, take a look at your product and help you in terms of marketing. We have many workshops that deals with marketing, and we have really good consultants on staff that are marketing professionals that can sit with you and come up with a strategy with in terms it most likely may include e-commerce, but first you have to put that strategy together. I see Olawale, do you have a question? I do see some people saying hi. All right, so if there is no other, oh, Lynn says, okay, Lynn says, I had it on Amazon and my manufacturer pulled out. I need a new manufacturer. And okay, great, Lynn, good, yes. Simply fill out the request for counseling at www.rnsbdc.com. You need to probably speak with someone in supply chain, or you know, someone that has some expertise with that, and we can get you matched with a consultant right away. Okay, great. So thanks to everyone for, if there's no other questions, thanks to everyone for tuning in to today's presentation. Ahmet, thank you again for another informative webinar. Some of you may have, I'm seeing a lot of new people here, so some of you may have missed the webinar on July 10th. So when I email out the link with today's slide presentation and with the video replay, I will also provide you with a link so you can watch part 1 of that presentation that goes through a little bit more of the basics of, you know, going into e-commerce, for those of you that are looking for that information. There is a third webinar that will be coming up soon, so please check our website or our Eventbrite page and register for those sessions, and this webinar will be repeated again later on in the year. So with that said, again, thank you for, I'm sorry, can you send me? Okay, no problem, Peter. Yeah, if you're on the list from the last webinar, you'll receive, but I'll make note of that. I'll send that out to you. So, okay, so have a blessed weekend, everyone. Thank you again for attending. Stay safe and be blessed.
Thank you, everyone.